The winter wind came early that year, sharp as a blade and mean as hunger. It slid through the cracks of the small wooden stall at the edge of the frontier town, rattling tin hooks and making the flames of a dozen hand-poured candles tremble like frightened hearts. Snow lay dirty and thin along the street, trampled by boots that passed without stopping. Christmas was only days away. Yet the town felt empty of mercy. The widow stood behind her rough table, fingers red and stiff from cold, watching people glance at her candles and move on. Each one had been poured by hand in the long nights after her husband was buried. Each candle carried the smell of pine resin, beeswax, and the faint sweetness of dried orange peel she had saved since autumn. She had prayed over them, one by one, believing Christmas might soften people's hearts. But hope does not always sell. Her name was Winter Rose, a name given by her mother when the first snow fell the night she was born. She had once lived in a house with laughter and lamplight. Now she lived in a narrow cabin with a leaky roof and a memory that would not rest. Her husband had been a good man, a quiet man, taken by fever before the ground froze. The town had offered words, not help. Words do not keep firewood stacked or flour jars full. By noon, Winter Rose had sold nothing. 0 buyers. Not a single coin lay in the tin cup beside her table. Mothers passed with children tugging at their skirts. Ranch hands laughed loud as they headed for the saloon. A storekeeper nodded kindly, but did not stop. Even the church folk hurried by, eyes forward, hands tucked away. Everyone had their own worries, and a widow's candles did not rise above them. She pulled her shawl tighter and told herself she would stay until dark. Pride kept her standing when her legs wanted to fold. She thought of Christmas morning and the empty table in her cabin. She thought of the last sack of flour, light as a lie. She thought of the promise she had made at the grave, that she would survive. No matter how hard the frontier tried to grind her down, the candles flickered again as a shadow crossed the stall, broad and still. Winter Rose looked up, expecting another passing glance. Instead, she met eyes dark as whetstone, steady and unreadable. The man stood apart from the townfolk, as if the street itself bent around him. He wore a long coat of worn leather, dusted with snow, and his boots were silent on the frozen ground. He was Apache, his presence unmistakable in a town that rarely welcomed such men unless they came with trade or trouble. His hair fell black and straight over his shoulders, tied at the neck with a strip of red cloth. A scar cut across one cheek, old and pale. He did not smile. He did not hurry. He looked at the candles as if they mattered. Winter Rose felt her breath catch. Fear came first, taught by whispers and warnings she had heard since childhood. But it was followed by something else, something quieter. The man's gaze held no hunger, no mockery. Only attention. How much? He asked, his voice low and even like wind moving through canyon stone. She swallowed. 2 cents each, she said, then quickly added, they burn clean. Long too, good for Christmas night. He nodded once. He reached into his coat and drew out a small leather pouch. The sound of coins inside was soft but heavy enough to make her heart jump. I will take them all, he said, for a moment. Winter Rose thought she had misheard. All. The word echoed louder than the church bell ever had. She looked down at the table, at the rows she had arranged so carefully, at the weeks of work sitting in wax and wick. Her fingers trembled. All of them, she repeated, unsure of her own voice. Yes, he said. Every candle. People slowed then. Heads turned. A murmur ran through the street. An Apache buying Christmas candles from a widow was not something the town had prepared for. Winter Rose felt the weight of their stares, felt judgment pressing in from all sides. She waited for someone to speak, to object, to warn her. No one did. The man poured coins onto the table, more than enough, silver catching the weak winter light. Winter Rose's eyes burned. She had not seen that much money in months. Her hands moved on their own, wrapping the candles in brown paper, tying them with twine. She worked fast, afraid the moment might break if she slowed. When she handed him the final bundle, their fingers brushed. His skin was warm, calloused. He looked at her then, really looked, as if he saw the hunger she hid, the strength she carried. The grief she did not speak. "Your fire will not go out this Christmas," he said, before she could answer. He turned and walked away, carrying the bundles like something precious. The street swallowed him, the crowd parting without a word. Winter Rose stood frozen, the coins heavy in her hands. Relief came in a rush so strong it nearly dropped her to her knees. She wanted to laugh, to cry, to chase after him and ask his name. Instead, she packed her empty table and walked home through the snow, heart beating like a drum. The cabin felt warmer that night. She cooked a small meal, richer than she had planned. She laid out bread and stew and allowed herself to think of Christmas morning without dread. She set one last candle on the windowsill, lit it, and watched the flame hold steady against the dark. She did not know she was being watched beyond the tree line. The Apache man stood with his horse, the bundles secured at the saddle. His name was Iron Hawk, a name earned through winters harsher than this one. He had seen towns burn and promises fail. He had seen kindness, too, rare and sharp when it appeared. The widow's hands, red and shaking, had stirred something he had not felt in many seasons. He rode toward the canyon trail as the sky darkened. Snow began to fall harder, thick and blinding. The wind rose, howling through the rocks like a warning. Iron Hawk slowed his horse, scanning the ridge ahead. Something was wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Then the first shout rang out, sharp and sudden. A gunshot cracked the air. The horse reared, candles shifting at the saddle. Iron Hawk reached for his weapon as shadows moved along the ridge, shapes breaking from the snow back in her cabin. Winter Rose heard the distant sound carried faintly on the wind. She froze, hand tightening around the candle on the sill. The flame flickered hard, bending low. Outside, the storm closed in, swallowing the road, the trail, and whatever fate was racing toward them both. The candle flame bent low, then straightened again, stubborn against the draft. Winter Rose stood by the window long after the sound faded, her breath held as if listening could pull meaning from the wind. The night felt charged, the way it did before a storm broke loose or bad news came riding hard. She told herself it was nothing. Frontier sounds traveled strangely in winter. Still, she barred the door and pushed a chair beneath the latch. A habit learned young, she sat at the small table where her husband had once carved toys from scrap wood. The memory came uninvited, soft and sharp at once. He had laughed easily, even when the world pressed in. When he died, that laughter seemed to leave the land with him. Winter Rose pressed her palm flat against the wood and steadied herself. Survival on the frontier demanded that a person learn how to sit with fear without letting it rule. Outside, the snow thickened, swallowing tracks as fast as they were made. The town lamps burned dim, halos of yellow barely holding back the dark. Somewhere beyond the trees, trouble was moving, and though she did not know how or why, Winter Rose felt its pull like a tide. Iron Hawk urged his horse forward through the narrow pass, eyes cutting through the storm. The first shout had not been Apache. He knew the difference. This was the rough bark of men who hunted profit more than honor. Traitors turned thieves. Men who saw winter as cover and widows as easy stories to erase. Another shot cracked. Closer now, the sound swallowed quick by snow. Iron Hawk leaned low, guiding his horse off the main trail and into a stand of pine. Branches clawed at his coat as he dismounted, fingers moving with calm precision. He had not survived this long by rushing into darkness blind. The candle bundles mattered, but not for their worth. They were proof of something still good in a land that often forgot such things. He loosened them from the saddle and tucked them beneath a fallen log, marking the place in his mind. Then he turned back toward the ridge, silent as the snow itself. The men moved clumsy through the drifts. Boots loud, voices sharp with impatience. Iron Hawk counted 3, maybe 4. Enough to make trouble. Not enough to feel safe. He waited, letting the storm work for him. Wind howled, snow stung, and fear made men careless. A shadow slipped too close. Iron Hawk stepped from the trees, swift and sure. There was a struggle, brief and fierce, boots sliding, breath ripping the air. One man went down hard, the sound of it lost beneath the wind. The others cursed, firing wild into the dark. Iron Hawk moved again, gone before they could fix on him, leaving only doubt and the growing sense that the night itself was against them. In town, the church bell tolled the hour, dull and distant. Winter Rose stirred from her chair, heart pounding. She wrapped herself in her coat and stepped onto the porch despite every instinct warning her back. The storm hit her full, cold and blinding. She scanned the road, the tree line, the shapes beyond. Nothing but snow and shadow. She nearly missed the shape near the fence. A man, half buried, struggling to rise. Winter Rose ran before she could think better of it. She reached him just as he fell back into the drift. His coat was torn, his breath ragged. She recognized the red cloth at his neck, the line of his jaw. Iron Hawk. She froze, fear and resolve crashing together. The town had taught her what to believe, who to fear. But the memory of his steady eyes and quiet words burned brighter. "Your fire will not go out this Christmas." She grabbed his arm and felt the strength still there, coiled and dangerous, even wounded. "Can you stand?" she asked, voice shaking but clear. He nodded once, pain flickering across his face. She braced herself beneath his shoulder and dragged him toward the cabin. Step by step, the storm hiding them as surely as it hid his pursuers. By the time they reached her door, her lungs burned and her hands were numb. Inside, warmth closed around them. Winter Rose barred the door again, then guided Iron Hawk to the chair. Blood darkened his sleeve, not much, but enough. She fetched water, cloth, the small tin of salve she saved for emergencies. Frontier women learned quickly how to mend more than torn clothes. Iron Hawk watched her work, eyes sharp despite the pain. "They will look," he said quietly. "Not long. They fear what they do not see." "Then we stay quiet," she replied as she cleaned the wound. She saw it was shallow, a cut more than a strike. Relief loosened her chest. She bound it tight, hands steady now, purpose driving fear back into its corner. Outside, the wind raged, covering all sound. They sat in silence for a time, the only noise the crackle of the hearth and the distant storm. Winter Rose felt the weight of the moment settle in. Harboring him could bring trouble. The town would not look kindly on such choices. But the frontier was built on harder decisions than kindness alone. "You did not have to help," Iron Hawk said. She met his gaze. "Neither did you?" The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Neither spoke. The candle on the sill burned low, its flame steady still. Winter Rose thought of the men on the ridge, of what they might want, of how quickly the fragile piece of winter could shatter. Iron Hawk shifted, testing his strength. "Those men will not stop easy," he said. "They smell coin. They smell weakness." Winter Rose straightened. "Then they will find none here." Outside, the storm began to ease, the wind falling to a whisper. Snow settled, hiding tracks, hiding truth. Somewhere beyond the cabin, shapes moved, cautious now, patient, the candle guttered, wax pooling at the base. Winter Rose reached to trim the wick, her hand pausing as a sound carried faint through the quiet. Not wind. Not snow. Footsteps. The footsteps came slow, testing the snow, pausing like the person outside was listening too. Winter Rose held her breath and glanced at the barred door. Iron Hawk's eyes narrowed, and his hand drifted toward the side of his coat, not hurried, not panicked, just ready. The cabin felt smaller in that moment, as if the storm had pushed the walls closer. A soft knock followed, careful and polite, the kind that tried to pretend it belonged to a friendly visit. Winter Rose did not answer. She moved to the hearth and took the iron poker, gripping it like it was part of her arm. The knocking came again, then a voice slipped through the crack. "Winter Rose, it's me," the voice said. "Open up, I saw your light." She recognized it. Cole Mercer. A town man with a loud laugh and soft hands, always near the storekeeper, always smelling of whiskey even in the morning. He had once offered to fix her roof, then asked what she'd pay him with when she said she had no coins. Winter Rose's stomach tightened. "What do you want?" she called back, keeping her tone steady. "I'm worried for you," Cole Mercer said. "Storm's been wild. Folks heard shots out by the ridge." A body might be lying in the snow. Sheriff's looking to make sure no one's harboring trouble. The word harboring landed like a stone. Winter Rose felt her pulse jump. She looked at Iron Hawk. He gave the smallest shake of his head, a warning without panic. "I'm fine," she said. "Go on," Cole Mercer chuckled, the sound thin. "That's so? Then you won't mind if I step inside and see for myself." "I do mind," she said. "My cabin's not the sheriff's office." Silence, then the scrape of boots shifting. "Now, don't get sharp," Cole Mercer said. "People talk. They saw the Apache buy your Christmas candles. Whole town watched him hand you silver. That kind of money draws attention. Men get curious. Men get jealous." Winter Rose's fingers tightened around the poker. Her candle sales had been her one small victory, and already the town had turned it into bait. She realized then that the disaster was not only out on the ridge. It was here, in the way hungry eyes watched a widow breathe. "You've got no right," she said. Cole Mercer's voice hardened. "Rights on the frontier belong to whoever can hold them. Open the door, Winter Rose. I'm trying to help you keep yours." Iron Hawk shifted in the chair, careful with his wound. His gaze moved to the back window, then to the small pantry door, measuring distance, routes, choices. Winter Rose saw it and felt a cold wave of dread. If Cole Mercer forced his way in, this cabin would become a cage. From down the road, another voice called out, louder, official. "Mercer, you over there." Cole Mercer muttered something under his breath. "Sheriff?" he called back, suddenly cheerful. "Just checking on the widow." Winter Rose stayed silent, waiting. She heard boots crunch away, then stop again by the porch. Cole Mercer leaned close to the door, voice low enough to feel like a threat pressed against wood. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "If you don't open tonight, you'll open tomorrow. Town don't protect widows for free." Then he was gone, boots fading into the night. Winter Rose did not move until the silence felt real again. Her shoulders ached from holding tension like a heavy sack. She turned to Iron Hawk, and for the first time anger rose above fear. "They think because I'm alone, I'm theirs," she said. Iron Hawk's expression tightened, something old and bitter in his eyes. "They think that about anyone they can corner," he replied. "That is why they hunt. That is why they lie." Winter Rose blew out a shaky breath and forced her hands to steady. "Cole Mercer mentioned the sheriff," she said. "If the sheriff comes, what then?" Iron Hawk's voice stayed low. "The sheriff's law bends toward the loudest men, and the loudest men tonight smell silver and blame." Winter Rose stared at the table where the coins still lay wrapped in cloth. It had felt like salvation only hours ago. Now it felt like a torch held over dry hay. "Why did you buy them?" she asked before she could stop herself. Iron Hawk looked at her a long moment. "Because you stood in the cold selling Christmas candles to people who did not see you," he said. "Because you did not beg. You worked. A person who keeps working in winter is not weak." Her throat tightened. She had not expected respect. "Not from him. Not from anyone," he continued, careful. "But the silver I carried is not ordinary. It was meant for trade beyond this town. There are men who follow such trade. Men who do not care what gets broken." Winter Rose's mind raced. "So they came for you?" "They came for what they believe I have," he said. "And now they believe you have it too." The fire popped in the hearth, sending a small spray of sparks up the chimney. Winter Rose imagined Cole Mercer's eyes, hungry and pleased. She imagined the sheriff's heavy boots on her porch. She imagined her name turning into gossip, then into a target. Iron Hawk winced, pressing his hand against his bandaged arm. Winter Rose noticed the way he hid pain, the way his strength did not ask for attention. She had known men who made noise to feel big. Iron Hawk made no noise at all. "Where were you taking the candles?" she asked. Trying to understand the shape of the storm around them, Iron Hawk's gaze drifted to the window, toward the invisible line of the canyon. "To a place where a fire means more than comfort," he said. "A place where winter kills the old first. Those candles can buy time." Winter Rose felt a twist in her chest. She thought of children huddled under thin blankets, of elders whose hands shook too much to strike flint. She had made her candles for Christmas, for warmth, for a small miracle. She did not know they might be needed for something larger. A new sound rose outside. Faint at first, then clearer, voices, not the sheriff alone. More than one man. They were out on the road now, moving as a group, speaking in low tones as if planning. Winter Rose stepped to the window and peered through a corner of the curtain. Lantern light bobbed in the dark, 3 points moving slow. She saw the sheriff's hat shape. She saw Cole Mercer at his side, too close, talking into the sheriff's ear. Behind them walked another man, lean and sharp, wearing a city coat that did not belong in a frontier town. Even from the window, Winter Rose could feel the stranger's attention, the way his head lifted toward her light like a dog catching scent. Iron Hawk spoke behind her. "That third man is not town," he said. Winter Rose turned, startled. "You know him." "I know the kind," Iron Hawk replied. "Paper men. They carry words that turn into chains. They pretend law is clean while they do dirty work." Winter Rose's mouth went dry. "What do they want?" Iron Hawk's eyes hardened. "They want a story that makes them look right. They will say I attacked first. They will say you were threatened. They will say they are saving the town." Outside, the lantern stopped at the edge of her yard. The sheriff raised his hand and knocked, hard this time, no politeness left in it. "Winter Rose," the sheriff called. "Open up, we need to speak." She looked at Iron Hawk. He pushed himself up, slowly, fighting pain. He gestured toward the back of the cabin where a narrow door led to the small shed and the tree line beyond. "You can't run," she whispered. "Snow will show everything." "The storm covered much," he said. "But not all." Winter Rose's thoughts spun. If she opened the door, she feared what Cole Mercer would do with his grin and his lies. If she did not, the sheriff might force it. The cabin was hers, but the frontier did not always honor ownership, especially when a widow stood alone. The sheriff knocked again. "Now," he demanded. Winter Rose stepped toward the door, poker still in her hand, and called back, "I'm coming." She glanced at Iron Hawk one last time. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried warning, as if he could already see the next turn of the trail. Winter Rose lifted the latch just enough to speak through the crack. "What is it?" she asked. The sheriff's lantern light spilled into the cabin like a thin blade. His face was stern, but his eyes kept flicking past her shoulder, searching. Cole Mercer stood beside him with that hungry patience. The stranger in the city coat watched her like she was part of a bargain. "Ma'am?" the sheriff said, voice smooth as if he practiced it. "We're investigating an incident on the ridge." Shots were fired. A man was hurt. "We have reason to believe an Apache is involved." Cole Mercer leaned closer. "We also have reason to believe he came into town with silver and gave it to you," he said. "A widow with sudden money raises questions." Winter Rose's grip on the poker tightened until her knuckles whitened. She forced herself to meet the sheriff's eyes. "I sold candles," she said. "Christmas candles. That's all." The stranger finally spoke, voice calm and cold. "Candles are simple," he said. "But silver is not. If you cooperate, this stays simple. If you don't, you become part of the trouble." Winter Rose felt the room tilt, as if the words had weight enough to bend the air. Behind her, Iron Hawk stood silent in the shadows, not moving. Waiting for the moment he might need to, the sheriff lifted his hand. "Open the door wider," he ordered. "Let us step in." Winter Rose swallowed hard. Outside, the town's lanterns glowed like watchful eyes. Inside, her last candle burned low, flame trembling as if it knew what was coming. And somewhere beyond the cabin, the night waited, deep and patient, ready to swallow whoever ran first. Winter Rose felt the weight of the moment press against her chest like a heavy hand. The sheriff's lantern threw long shadows across the cabin floor, turning the walls into moving shapes that refused to stay still. Cole Mercer's smile was thin now, stretched tight with impatience. The stranger in the city coat watched everything, saying nothing, already measuring what could be taken and what could be twisted into law. "I've done nothing wrong," Winter Rose said, forcing her voice to stay calm. This is my home. The sheriff's eyes softened just a little, not with kindness, but with calculation. No one's saying you did, he replied. But trouble follows certain men, and trouble has a way of spreading. Behind her, Iron Hawk shifted his weight, careful not to draw attention. Winter Rose felt his presence like a steady post driven deep into the ground. It gave her strength and fear in equal measure. Cole Mercer stepped closer, boots crunching snow at the threshold. We can end this easy, he said. Just tell us where he is. Town will remember you cooperated. Christmas will be quiet. Winter Rose laughed once, sharp and bitter. Christmas has never been quiet for people like me. The stranger finally moved, lantern light catching the edge of his face. His eyes were pale, empty of warmth. Widows survive by choosing sides, he said. You are choosing badly. Winter Rose looked from face to face, realizing something clear and cold. They were not here for truth. They were here to finish a story they had already decided on. And she was a piece in it, useful only until she stopped being convenient. A gust of wind pushed snow through the open crack of the door, scattering white across the floor like ash. The candle on the sill flickered hard, nearly dying. Winter Rose felt a sudden, fierce urge rise in her chest, the kind that comes when a person realizes fear has already taken enough. You can step inside, she said, opening the door wider. But you don't come in accusing me. Cole Mercer's grin returned, satisfied. The sheriff stepped forward first, lantern raised, scanning the cabin. His gaze moved to the chair, the table, the hearth. It paused on the bandages laid out neatly. His jaw tightened. What's that? He asked. Supplies, Winter Rose answered. For winter. The stranger followed the sheriff in, eyes sharp, missing nothing. Cole Mercer lingered by the door, blocking the way like a guard who enjoyed his post. Snow melted beneath his boots, leaving dark marks on the floor. Iron Hawk remained still, half-shadowed, until the lantern light brushed his shoulder. The sheriff stiffened, hand moving toward his belt. Cole Mercer sucked in a breath, excitement flashing across his face. There he is, Cole Mercer said. Told you. Iron Hawk raised his hand slowly, empty, controlled. You track me hard for men who claim law, he said. The sheriff squared his stance. You're hurt, he observed. There was a scuffle on the ridge. Men say you fired first? Iron Hawk's gaze did not leave the sheriff. Men say many things when winter makes them desperate. The stranger stepped closer, studying Iron Hawk like an item on a ledger. You carry silver meant for trade, he said. Silver that belongs to people with papers. Iron Hawk's jaw tightened. It belongs to people who need it. Cole Mercer laughed. Hear that? Always a story. Winter Rose watched the room tighten around them, every word pulling the rope a little closer. She saw the sheriff's doubt flicker, saw Cole Mercer's hunger grow, saw the stranger's patience stretch thin. Each man wanted something different, and that made them dangerous in different ways. From outside came a distant shout. Another voice answered it. More lantern light appeared at the edge of the yard. Winter Rose's heart sank. Word traveled fast when trouble promised reward. The sheriff frowned. More townsfolk, he muttered. This is getting loud. Iron Hawk's eyes flicked to the window. Noise draws the wrong kind of courage. Cole Mercer smirked. Town's been waiting for courage. Winter Rose felt anger rise, hot and sharp. You don't speak for this town, she snapped. You speak for yourself? Cole Mercer turned on her, eyes narrowing. Careful, he warned. You forget your place? Her grip tightened on the iron poker. I know my place. It's here, in my home. The sheriff lifted his hand. Enough, he said. We do this clean. Iron Hawk, you come with us? Widow, you'll answer questions later. Iron Hawk did not move. If I leave, you will not leave her alone, he said. That is clear. The stranger's lips curved in a thin smile. Concern from a hunted man, he said. Touching. Winter Rose stepped forward before fear could stop her. If he goes, I go too, she said. You want answers, you get them with me present. The sheriff stared at her. That's not how it works. It is tonight, she replied. You step into my cabin, you don't decide alone. The lantern light trembled as the sheriff exhaled. He was losing control of the shape of things, and he knew it. Outside, boots crunched closer. Voices murmured, curious, sharp with anticipation. A sudden crash echoed from the back of the cabin. The pantry door rattled hard as if struck. Everyone froze. Iron Hawk's head snapped toward the sound. Cole Mercer spun, startled. What was that? Another hit the door, stronger. Wood groaned. Iron Hawk's voice dropped. They found the back. The stranger's eyes lit with interest. Looks like your storm has company. Winter Rose's breath came fast. She had thought the danger stood only in front of her. Now it pressed from behind too. The cabin felt like a trap, tightening with every second. The sheriff cursed it under his breath. Mercer, he barked. You said they were 3. Cole Mercer shrugged, unease creeping in. Must have brought friends. Iron Hawk moved then, quick despite the wound. He stepped closer to Winter Rose, positioning himself between her and the men. When that door breaks, he said softly, you run for the shed. Do not stop. She shook her head. I won't leave you. His gaze softened just for a moment. Living is not leaving, he said. It is choosing when to move. The back door splintered with a crack like thunder. Cold air rushed in, snow swirling. Carrying the smell of sweat and iron, shapes filled the doorway. Men bundled in coats, eyes wild, weapons raised but uncertain. They had not expected so many lanterns, so many witnesses. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. Town law, frontier greed, and winter desperation all met in that narrow space. The sheriff shouted, Lower those? The men hesitated. Cole Mercer stepped forward, eager. This is ours now, he said. No running. The stranger raised his hand slightly, a signal meant to calm and control. Careful, he said. Too many eyes. Iron Hawk's stance widened, steady as stone. Winter Rose felt the fire of fear turn into something harder inside her, something that refused to bend. Outside, more townsfolk gathered, drawn by light and voices. Faces pressed close, whispers spreading like sparks. The night held its breath. The candle on the sill guttered, flame shrinking to a thin line. Wax spilled over the edge, pooling on the wood like time running out. Winter Rose's pulse thundered in her ears as she realized every path ahead led through fire. The men at the back door shifted, one stepping forward too fast. The sheriff's hand flew up. Cole Mercer lunged, shouting. Iron Hawk moved at the same instant, the room exploding into motion, and just as the first blow was about to fall, the candle flame went out. Dark swallowed the cabin in a single breath. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the sound of snow rushing in through the broken door and the hard breathing of men who did not know who would move first. Fear thrives in darkness, but so does truth. Winter Rose felt Iron Hawk's hand close gently around her wrist, steadying her. She did not scream. She did not step back. She stood her ground, letting the quiet stretch until it became unbearable. Then the sheriff struck a match. Light flared weak but enough. The room came back into shape, rough walls, shattered door, too many men standing too close together. In that sudden glow, the picture was clear in a way words never could make it. Iron Hawk stood unarmed, wounded but upright. Winter Rose stood beside him, poker lowered but ready. Cole Mercer stood sweating, eyes darting, no longer certain. The stranger in the city coat had shifted back, already thinking of distance and excuses. The men who broke in through the back door looked around and saw witnesses instead of prey. The sheriff took it all in. His face changed, not fast but sure. He had worn law like a coat for years, but he had not always been blind. Winter Rose saw something settle behind his eyes. Something heavy and honest. This ends now, the sheriff said. Cole Mercer laughed, but it cracked halfway through. Ends how? You saw him. He's hurt. He's guilty. Enough, the sheriff said, louder this time. You brought half the town into a widow's cabin. You pushed past my word. That is not law. Cole Mercer opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time that night, he looked small. The stranger stepped forward, voice smooth again. "Sheriff, let us not make this messy. There are papers, claims, silver that must be accounted for." Iron Hawk met his gaze. "Your papers never fed a hungry child," he said. "They never kept an elder alive through winter." The words landed harder than any blow. Murmurs rose among the men at the back door. Some shifted, uneasy. Others looked away. Winter Rose saw it then, the crack running through them. Not all had come for cruelty. Some had come because fear is loud and hunger listens. The sheriff nodded once, decision made. "Iron Hawk," he said, "you'll come to the office, but you'll come walking, not bound. And you'll tell your story. All of it." Iron Hawk inclined his head. "I will." The sheriff turned to Winter Rose. "You'll come too, if you're willing." She did not hesitate. "I'm willing." Cole Mercer protested then, loud and angry. "This is wrong." He attacked men. He paid her with stolen silver. The sheriff's gaze snapped to him. "You will be quiet," he said. "You followed a rumor into violence. That will be addressed." The men at the back door backed away under the weight of that voice. One by one, they lowered what they carried. Snow drifted in through the broken door, but the worst of the storm had passed. They walked through town together, lanterns lighting the way. People came out onto porches, whispers turning into watching eyes. Winter Rose held her head high. She had nothing to hide now. Iron Hawk walked beside her, steady, proud, even in pain. At the office, the truth came out slow, but clean. Iron Hawk spoke of the silver, how it was earned through trade meant to buy winter supplies for his people. He spoke of men who tried to take it by force on the ridge. He did not embellish. He did not beg. He told it straight, the way a man does when he has nothing to gain from lies. Winter Rose spoke too. She told how the candles were made, why she sold them, how Iron Hawk paid fair and asked nothing. She told how Cole Mercer threatened her, how men broke her door in the night. Her voice shook only once, and she did not let it linger there. The sheriff listened. Others listened too. The stranger in the city coat tried to interrupt, but the sheriff silenced him. Papers were demanded. Claims examined. The silver was weighed, traced, proven not stolen but earned. Cole Mercer's lies collapsed under their own weight. When asked why he pushed so hard, he had no answer that did not show his hunger for power and coin. The town saw him then, not as a loud man with opinions, but as a dangerous one. By morning, the truth had settled like fresh snow, covering the mess but not erasing what lay beneath. Cole Mercer was taken away. The stranger left town before noon, coat pulled tight, eyes never looking back. Iron Hawk was free to go. The sheriff stood outside the office with Winter Rose as the sun crept pale over the horizon. "You showed courage," he said. "That counts for something." She nodded. "I didn't know I had a choice," she replied. "Turns out I did." Iron Hawk came to stand beside her, the wound at his arm bound clean and strong. He looked toward the east, where the light touched the land. "I must go," he said. "Winter does not wait." Winter Rose felt something tighten in her chest, sharp and unexpected. "The candles," she said quickly. "They're hidden." "I can show you." They walked together to the edge of the trees where the bundles lay safe beneath the log. Iron Hawk lifted them carefully, as if they carried more than wax and wick. "These will help," he said. "More than you know." She hesitated, then reached into her coat and pressed a small bundle into his hand. "One candle, wrapped neat." "For the road," she said. "For when the dark feels heavy." Iron Hawk closed his fingers around it. "Your fire will not go out," he said again. This time it was not a promise. It was a truth already proven. He mounted his horse and turned once more before riding away. "When spring comes," he said, "I will return. Trade is better when built on trust." Winter Rose watched him disappear into the white, heart full and steady. The town did not change overnight, but it shifted. People spoke differently to her now. Some with respect, some with regret. Orders came for candles. Not charity, business. Winter Rose worked hard, hands strong, heart lighter. She fixed her roof before the next storm. She stacked wood. She learned that standing did not always mean standing alone. On Christmas morning, the cabin glowed warm and bright. Candles burned clean in every window down the street, small flames pushing back winter one by one. Winter Rose stood at her door and breathed in the cold air, no longer afraid of it. Far away, in the deep quiet of the canyon, other candles burned too. And where their light touched stone and skin and hope, winter lost a little of its power. That was the lesson the frontier offered at last. Hard times test the weak, but they reveal the strong. Kindness is never wasted. And sometimes, when the world looks its darkest, one small flame is enough to change the shape of everything.